Welcome, ladies, to the Real Estate Investor Show, providing inspiration, strategies, and insight to empower women investors to live balanced and financially free lives. Now, here are your co-hosts, Liz and Andressa.
So in today's episode, ladies, we have Cristina Kudlock. She has mastered 100% virtual wholesaling, and she's done this in competitive markets as well. What I think you'll appreciate most about our episode today is we really kind of get nitty-gritty on tips and strategies on how to differentiate yourself and not just try to go after the leads, but actually have them come to you, which is always a much better place to be in.
Absolutely. And if you don't want to become a wholesaler, we also talked about like the cash buyer, right? How to find the wholesaler, what are the best tips? And once you get that relationship, the leads will also come your way. When you close them and then the deals flow, it will continue doing that. So this is all about wholesaling, but wholesaling is not just this hobby that you do once in a while. If you want to wholesale, it is a business. If you don't want to wholesale, you better partner up with wholesalers. That's how it works. And before we get into Cristina's story, let's hear a word from our sponsors. Enjoy this episode.
Welcome back, ladies. This is Liz.
And this is Andressa.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Investor Show, where every week we are interviewing some amazing women in the business of growing their wealth in their own way, on their own terms. Right, Andressa?
Indeed.
Yeah, and that's what we're all about. Cristina, thank you so much for being on our show today. Thank you for spending time with us and the women and men who like our show, listening and excited to hear your story here. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, we're going to jump into your story as we like to fairly quickly. For those joining us for the first time or those who come back every week, thank you. We always like to kind of kick things off with a quick little mention of something, a little lesson to bring into your day, into your week. So it's my turn to do that this week. So I'm going to share an experience I had on a mastermind we hold with our Investor EXP team. And it's a quarterly mastermind where, the team, obviously, just like real estate agents, right? Their main focus is growing their agent business. What's so special about our Investor EXP team is to really grow your investments too. And Andressa and I became really passionate about that when we attended a conference many years ago where so many real estate agents are not investing themselves. So anyway, on this mastermind, I wanted to share this as a quick little tip for those listening. I hear this so many times with our members and community members that women just don't know which road to take. And the woman on our mastermind was saying, I'm in an expensive market, and I don't know if I should just go all in on a short-term rental here. It'll be my first short-term rental, or I'm experienced in multifamily, I'm experienced with small multis. Should we go out of state and buy a duplex or something that we bought before, like a small multi? And I'm really struggling with this because my husband's in construction, and then she just started sharing a little bit about her story and her struggles and her challenges, right? Which we do on these mastermind calls with our team. And, first thing, you have to take a deep breath. Okay. Take a deep breath. And then the second thing we were really helping her through was, where do you want to be in 5 years? And so many times we forget to ask that question of ourselves. And because why that's important is in the road, you'll figure out which road to take. And it will become a little clearer if it's aligned with your long-term vision. That's number one. Number two, I'm a really big fan of mitigating risk. So in other words, once you answer that question, you'll know, hey, which strategy here might mitigate my risk? So I'm going to go out of state in a new market, but go with an asset class that I know, or stay close to home and go down a new niche, a new strategy. And there's no right and wrong, but as we noodled it and talked through it and really kind of got to the core of her strengths, her husband's strengths, it really became very evident that the duplex out of state made a little more sense at this time for her, basis those two answers. So ladies listening, keep taking that step back, take a deep breath. There's no right and wrong. And when you really start to say, how do I mitigate the risk? And what can I bring to the table? And what makes sense to do now? And then you go with it and you take action for that. So I just wanted to share that because it was a good thought that, we don't have to have the right answers, but we have to just work them through to see what is aligned with our future. So I thought that might be helpful for the women to listening could take into their worlds. So with that, we want to jump into Cristina's story. Cristina, we always like to kind of kick things off with the question of, what propelled you to get involved in real estate investing?
Yeah. So, at the beginning of my journey, I guess it was right out of college. It was right after everything with the market kind of crashed back in '08. And a few years later, you could get properties for dirt cheap. And so that's when I got into my first, it was basically, I didn't intend for it to be an investment, or it was just for me to live there. But I put a lot of sweat equity into it. My dad kind of helped me flip it and lived there for a few years. But about 5 years later, I sold it for more than, twice what I bought for it. So I was like, there might be something to this, right? And so that was kind of like my first bout with real estate and investing. And then I got, a few years later after that, I decided I did want to get into real estate and got my license, or went through the process to get a license. And, as I was doing that, I was like, you know what, this really isn't for me. I had no desire to actually be an agent. And so shortly after that, I actually discovered wholesaling, and I was just like blown away. I was like, wow, I didn't even know you could do that. Right. And so that was actually when I was in the process of moving to California and moved to LA. It was when I started dating my now husband. And so, when I stumbled across wholesaling, that's when I was like, I'm going to do this instead. So
I think a
started
lot of
wholesaling
people,
business.
I think a lot of people underestimate wholesaling,
Yeah.
and they think, oh, I'll just start with the quote unquote easy strategy, which is wholesaling. Um, I won't put any big investment into it, and let's see how it goes. And I couldn't disagree more with that. I think wholesaling is it's a business on its own. If you treat it as a business,
Absolutely.
you've got to invest in different systems, different processes, and you've got to like master your skill with talking to sellers and following up and having that structure in place. So I don't want to throw some like cold water in all the women that are listening that want to start wholesaling. I just want to set the right expectations, because if you run the business, and that's what we're going to talk about it today, if you run it properly, it works. But if you just like treat it as like, oh, here and there, and expect that beautiful return at the end on your investment, just a waste of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can wholesale deals don't take nearly as long as, a fix or flip, or, any other strategy for that matter. So it can be like, you are very much on to the next one. So you do have to have that consistency. Otherwise, a deal here and there doesn't really, depending on what market you're in, right? But
right. So let's break it down, right? Because everything that you do is virtual.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's wonderful, because then there's no limit. So for the women that are looking to wholesale, right, what are the first steps? What do they need to put in place in order to get their business up and running?
Yeah, marketing. I like to always say that a wholesaling business, first and foremost, is basically a marketing company, right? You need to have really consistent lead flow coming in, and always, filling a pipeline with more leads, and, bringing people through to closing and stuff. And, after you close, you're looking for more leads, right? So consistent leads is number one for sure.
One of the biggest challenges nowadays, right?
Right.
So how do you resolve that?
Yeah, I think you can't rely on just one marketing channel. You definitely have to have some consistency across a few different channels, so that if you're starting to see some issues with one, then you do have, 2, 3 other channels that can keep you going while you're, trying to dial in what might be wrong with one of your other marketing channels.
What those channels are. So like, let's break that down even further.
Yeah.
What's one of them that you're using, especially in today's market? I mean, it's a competitive market.
Absolutely. Yeah. So my number one lead strategy is SEO. So people finding me on the internet and, typing something into Google, like sell my house quickly, and then being one of the first ones to pop up. And so it's my favorite lead, generation strategy, just because the leads come to you a lot differently than, like, let's say something like cold calling or texting, where you're reaching out to other people and seeing if they want to sell, right? And they're like, who are you? Like, you're Joe Schmo calling me, kind of a thing. Whereas with SEO leads, those are people who found you and they've already decided that they want to sell. You're not trying to interrupt someone in their day and see, like, who might have selling at the back of their mind, and, trying to pull them away from their day to have a conversation with you. The SEO leads, they're people who have already decided that they want to sell. They're reaching out to you because they want an offer today, tomorrow. They're ready to act quickly. So those are definitely my favorite leads, the ones that we concentrate on the most. Yeah.
So it's a big mental shift, right? Instead of
Mhm.
hunting for the leads, you're attracting the leads, and
Exactly.
therefore you're just calling them back to talk about the deal that they
Exactly.
already describe it over there. That can
Right.
be time consuming if you don't have the systems in place. So in my head, you talked about having the website. Talk to me about the funnel that you have behind the scene. And did you build that yourself? Did you hire a company to build? Because a lot of the women that are listening is like, I cannot even think about all the details that goes around it. So I'm curious to see, what was your experience?
Yeah, so with SEO, there's not too much funnels involved, but with, like, we do a lot of Facebook marketing as well, and there's a ton of funnels for that. And that is definitely something that I've hired another company to do, because there's just so many different, you're essentially using a lead magnet, right? You want to put your offers out there and give give your sellers a reason to want to contact you and what you can offer, things like that. And that can be really complicated and time consuming, and quite frankly, not really anything I care to get to learn too much about. So that is stuff that I've just figured out.
So walk me through the process when somebody comes to your website.
Mhm.
They put their information there, and then that goes to a CRM.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if they put their information in, then that's the first lead form. And then what happens is, because the very first lead form, very simple. It's just the address, their phone number, and email. I don't even ask for their name, right? I'm just trying to get the least amount, but the most important information for us. From there, it takes them to a second lead form, which is going to ask their name. It's going to ask them lots of questions about the property and, how much they're looking to get for the property. A really cool kind of trick that I've learned too is, like, asking someone how much they want for the property, and then asking again, well, if we were to pay all of the closing costs, there's no commissions, we pay for everything, what's the lowest you'd take? And it's cool because sometimes people will talk themselves down like 100 grand for, so just by asking that second question. So that's kind of a cool tip. But from there, after they do the second lead form, then yeah, it goes, I have a connection set up, a Zapier, so that it automatically gets pushed over to our CRM. And then from there, and then it also, like, I get a text notification. My acquisitions manager, she gets a text notification. We got email notifications, and we're jumping on those leads and calling them, like, within the first.
What's the CRM that you're currently using?
I use Forefront.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So in the spirit of virtual, right?
Mhm.
You find an opportunity, you jump on that opportunity, and it's in, where's the furthest that you've closed in terms of
So we've done stuff in New Mexico and Texas. We get just some random stuff, but most of our deals are in Los Angeles. I'm no longer in Los Angeles. I'm in Arizona now. But even the deals that we do here in Arizona, most of the time we don't even go to see them. Everything is virtual.
So you have to walk that through for us, because you're on the phone. Sounds like, how are you assessing? Because we always talk about deal criteria, right?
Right.
So it has to fit these 7 things, these 5 things, whatever. How do you know you want to take the next step? And what is the next step? Since you're not going to physically drive there.
Right.
Curious what that looks like.
Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing that we're going to do is run our numbers on the property, look at comps, see everything that's sold, and just get really clear on how much we'd be able to resell it for, or what the ARV would be, and get pictures. So usually, and it's really cool, especially because of COVID. COVID has really shifted people's mindsets so that they're very open to the fact of like now, there's a lot of people out there that don't necessarily want a bunch of people just like coming through their house. And so it has made people very perceptive to, oh, could you send me pictures of the property? So, more often than not, we just get pictures directly from the seller that they took themselves. Every now and then you get, like some older couples or some older sellers who aren't too tech savvy and don't want to, and you don't want to burden them with, hey, take pictures. So we can just send a property runner out there and have somebody go and take pictures for us. We use like different kinds of services. I think one of them is called BPO Photo Flow. And then we've also, in some of the like more remote areas, we've just like hired somebody that's local and found somebody to just go over and take pictures and then use that to run our numbers.
In terms of like the numbers, that makes sense. And then like so much of what I understand, because I actually never did a whole lot of wholesaling and talking to homeowners. We work with wholesalers, quite honestly. We knew early on that was just not something, not that I didn't want to do. I actually would really probably like talking to homeowners, knowing my personality, but it just wasn't something we focused our energies on. Sure. I'm curious though, like there's so much of that's so important in this business, right? Really making, how do you differentiate, not just the offer, but the connection. And I've understood that to be very important. When you're doing this virtually, are you setting up Zoom meetings with these people? Like, is there any contact? Is it literally just, this is the offer, do you accept it? Like, what does your process look like around that? Because I think there's a humanness to this, to the wholesaling business. Why are they going to go with you or someone else? And
sure,
I would think virtual makes a difference, so it impacts that, I should say.
100%. And I do think that since our number one lead generation strategy is SEO, I think that that's what really does help to give us an edge, because people have come to our website and like, you can see it. I'm all over my website, my acquisitions, like there's pictures of us, there's videos of us. So it does give people a chance to really interact with us and feel like, not that they know us, but at least have some sort of a comfortability with us, because they've seen our faces, we've chatted on the phone. Oh, and like you get people all the time, they're like, oh, that's you, like who I saw like there. And so like they make that connection that way. So I do think that really helps. But then beyond that, we do have several phone calls with them. Usually so from the first phone call, we set the stage and let them know like, yeah, this usually takes about 15-20 minutes. Do you have time for that? And, sit down and try and learn about every aspect of their house and why, not even their house, but why they want to sell, and just really build rapport with them and let them know that, from this phone call, we're going to be taking all the information so that we can go use that to run our numbers and get an idea of what we're going to be able to pay for the property. And then from there, and we do, after we do run our numbers, then usually we get back on for another phone call and talk about the numbers further, tell them where we're at, why we're there. And we just really try to explain our process of how we arrived to this number. And I think that really does, it's not just like, here's our offer. We're not just like sending a piece of paper and then waiting for them to sign. We do try to like walk them through what our offer is and why it is that.
Cristina, those look great, right? But talk to me about the mistakes that you're like thinking about it, you're like cringe. And then of course, those are all great because then you don't make them again, right? But I would like to hear from you. What are the things that you say, listen, I dropped the ball there very badly and screwed the deal because of that, but then I learn and then move forward. I think those are also important for the women to hear it.
Absolutely, right. And that's how you learn and get better. But definitely, I mean, just fudging your numbers, really. That's the thing that that I'm always, especially if it's a new market and we don't know what we need. So like for instance, in LA, I know anything that's like in LA proper, LA city, I can move at like 85% of the ARV minus whatever the repairs are. If it's in that area, I know it like the back of my hand. I know what I can be able to sell it for. But if you deviate outside of that area, like for instance, we had a property last month in San Bernardino County in the mountains. So it's an area that I don't have as many buyers for as I would somewhere in LA, right? It's a little bit more remote. The people aren't buying houses for a primary residence there. It's usually like a vacation home and stuff. And so the numbers change a little bit. And so just not being as certain of your numbers and then having to go back to the seller and let them know, hey, we can't get it done at this number. And especially like when you are just working off of pictures and you're not having eyes on the property before you make that offer, there's always, there's a host of unknowns that can be at play there. So that's definitely what I and to try to avoid that as much as possible. We, especially if, not knowing, hey, what is the spread I'm going to need to have and to be able to move this, talking to realtors in the area or getting a feel of other people who are much more familiar with that area and those surroundings and the market there can be really helpful.
And just to jump onto that question that Andressa just said, when it comes to like, sounds like you have an acquisitions director, you have someone who's doing that for you. And I don't know what your whole team looks like, but you've grown your team, you've grown your processes and systems. When it comes to that stuff too, what would you wish you knew as you were, as you were building this and as you built it, what would have been really helpful for you to know early on, so you could have avoided some mistakes there too, because it's sometimes I want to make a point of this. There's so much of this business is like the craft and the art, right? The actual homeowners and the deal flow. But so much of this business and so many of the women in our community, as they master that, right? You're really mastering systems and processes and teams,
100%.
just like any growing company. So that's a big, big issue and a big area of growth a lot of the women in our community have. So curious to get, the mistakes from those areas too. If that's okay.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I wish, I guess, if anything, I wish I would have done differently, or I guess it done sooner, is hired people sooner. I think I tried too long to just be like a solopreneur and do everything myself and try to just take on too much. And it really does, prevent you from growing. You need other people. And honestly, other people is what make it more fun too. Just because, I mean, I have a home office, right? And so it could be a very lonely, a lonely pursuit if you are just doing it alone. So building my team has been probably one of the scarier things, because you do start giving up, the control, and that can be a scary thing. But, just finding people that jive with your vision. And, I think like my acquisitions manager, she's way better with people than I am, like I'm good at talking with people just because I've built that skill out of necessity from, needing to talk to sellers, but it's not, quite frankly, it's not really anything that I enjoy. Whereas Paige, my acquisitions manager, like she thrives talking to people, right? And she gets like jazzed from a great conversation and everything. Whereas like for me, if I'm talking to too many people a day, like kills my spirit a little bit, like I like to, and not too many people a day, I should say, but like the transactional side of wholesaling, right? Like just conversations with sellers, that I don't get energy from it. Whereas Paige, she gets energy from something like that. So finding people that, that have skills that you don't and can do things easier than you can, sometimes it could be really hard to find that person, especially someone that you could trust too and everything. But I would have hired faster if I could rewind.
in terms of expectations, we see a lot on social media, people waving their checks with tons of numbers, right?
Yeah.
I love it when I see those.
Yeah.
Oh boy, here we go, right?
Mhm.
Good for you. If that rocks your boat or whatever that say is, good for you.
Right.
Uh, talk to me about what is a realistic spread on the profit. And I know depending on the market, depending on the prop, there's a lot of depends on it. But
Sure.
for you, what are you looking for when you're putting a deal together? What type of profit you're looking to make in a single deal?
We usually aim for at least 20 to 25,000 per deal. But that is something I will say that I have very much struggled with my whole career, is just the consistency with that. And like, I mean, I'd like to say, oh no, we make 20K on every deal, and because we know our numbers and we're a machine, and that's just not the case. Like we have, deals that we've closed for 5,000. But then we have deals all the way up to 90,000, too. So that's that's
Very big
hard.
spread. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. On my end, right, as the cash buyer, there are a couple of things. The first time that I think I paid, the max that I paid was 45,000
Mhm.
for a wholesaler.
For a
And
wholesaler.
but I made 98 at the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah,
2
exactly.
months. So I said to him, you keep coming. I'll
Yeah.
pay you over and over again.
Yeah,
And the
exactly.
property sold prior of being listed on the market. So it was
Oh,
like,
awesome.
we do that all day long. Let's go
Yeah.
with that. Right. But that's the good part. The bad part is when we are bombarded by listings that don't fit our criteria.
Yeah.
And the funny thing here, we're in Philadelphia. So a lot of the houses are very, very old.
Mhm.
And we know what it takes to renovate the entire house. And then when I see a rehab cost of 30,000 or 40,000, I was like, come on,
Yeah. It's
we won't be
90.
able to do anything with
Yeah.
that. Right. So in terms of the construction, I think this is a piece, important piece. So there's no waste of time for anybody involved. Either the wholesaler knows about it, or somebody on the team knows about it, or there's something else in place to. I'm not asking a very specific, a GC estimate on it, but it's just it's so far from the real number
Mhm.
that then I'm not trusting that wholesaler anymore, because I was like, you really don't freaking know what
That's
it really takes. So how do you mitigate that?
that's 100% like what we really do try to avoid, because that it's exactly what you said, is if you send out too many deals where your rehab estimate is just botched, people are going to stop trusting you, and then not look at they're going to unsubscribe from your list, right? They're not going to want anything to do with your properties. And so I think just trying to be overly generous on it too. Like there's, it's a fine line though, because then I've had a few instances where people are like, is the rehab really that much? Is there something else
Right.
not going on? Because I'm looking at the pictures and it doesn't seem like that much. And I'm like, yeah, we were just trying to be generous, And so it is there is a need to be as accurate as possible so that people do take you seriously. And it kind of depends on the area too. We usually do like, depending on the area, but like $50 per square foot in LA, unless it's a nicer area that you're going to need to stretch that more. But yeah, trying to just put a dollar amount to the square footage or per square footage has been pretty good for us. And then just talking to a few other, like if there is an instance where we're just like, I have no idea, I will get a contractor friend out there and try to give me a better estimate.
Yeah, that's great. And that's so important. I think something that a lot of women struggle with right now is finding really good wholesalers. So they're having to do it themselves. They're having to maybe do just the wholesaling themselves, or find more deal flow, because deal flow is a challenge.
Yeah.
So I'm curious though, from that vein, and the really good wholesalers have some great buyers.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know what I mean? Like they're not
Mm-hmm.
like, it's not like they're just sitting around waiting for that new investor to come along. So it's a
Right.
building of a relationship. The really good ones usually are.
Absolutely.
The ones that have literally no relationships, they're the ones that send the random email blasts out and you're just like, yeah, you don't have anyone
Right.
to even sell you the property, to sell the property to. So for women listening who values wholesalers, wants to find more of them, moving into new markets, everyone's always pivoting and thinking about new markets. How do you find, how's like some creative ways to find wholesalers, to really find those good ones and then to differentiate yourself from every other investor that wants to work with those good wholesalers? I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious to hear your perspective coming from the wholesaler perspective.
Yeah. So to differentiate yourself, I would say like just so there's a lot of people who just subscribe to our list, right? And they know where to find, like we have a offmarketinvesting.com. We have that website where people can just go and drop their information, but really a phone call just goes a long way. And like, if I know what the deal volume that you're doing, or maybe even a very specific area that you're looking for. So first and foremost, I mean, I look for people who are doing a high volume, right? When people are doing a high volume, they're better at making decisions, and they pull the trigger when they see a deal and they know a deal, and they're easy to work with, right? It's hard because there has been great buyers that maybe they're a little bit more picky, or maybe they're not like an actual company. They're just, they have another job, but they're looking for a deal and want to invest, and they're great to work with because those buyers often will pay a little bit more. But their decision making is because they're not buying properties on this conveyor belt where they're just like, they know what they're looking for and they're pulling the trigger. They take a little bit more time, and they are a little bit harder to work with just because they are asking more questions there, which is fine. I don't mind people asking questions, but they do just take a little bit more time to be able to bring that deal through to completion. But if I do know somebody, if that's the instance for someone, or that's the circumstance, but just letting us know which areas you're very interested in, like, hey, if there's like this area, this square block in a specific neighborhood of LA, when you're telling me that that's what you're looking for and I get something, then I know to to bring it to you first, right? So yeah, being very specific about your criteria, or just even having a conversation about what kinds of the volume you're doing. I mean, volume always gets my attention just because I know you're going to be easy to work with.
Yeah, and taken seriously, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rather than like, I just read a real estate investing book and I want to
Yeah.
find some, it's you're taken differently. And
Right.
same thing if you're talking to commercial brokers. Last thing you want to say to a commercial broker is, I just want to get into multifamily.
Yeah.
And, I don't have any money,
Yeah.
obviously. So one other question for you too, Christina, you talked a lot about, you're creating the lifestyle you want. And we're it's so important to us to, empower women in our community to live life on their own terms. So curious, like, we think it's so easy to say, yeah, I want this lifestyle and that lifestyle. Curious what your lifestyle design looks like. And secondly, how you came upon it.
Yeah. So, I mean, since the beginning of when me and my husband got together, like when we met, I was living in Phoenix and he was in LA. So we did long distance dating for a few months, and then we quit our jobs and went and backpacked through Europe for 5 months. So we've always been travelers. We go on at least like 2 international trips every year. And so that's what I like. I like to be able to travel and go pick up whenever we want to, and but still be making money, right? So I think just being able to work wherever I want to work is really important to me. So that's why I have always really gravitated towards the virtual model. And that's important to me. And then also, like, even for my team, my acquisitions manager, she's always bouncing around too. And so I just like, find people that do that like interesting and just fun to work with, like people who like adventure in their lives. Right. And so it's kind of cool because I have like, it's a small team, but like the 3 other people that I work with or work for me, all kind of fit that mold too.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it's so simple. And you said it just quickly, about but it's so powerful because so many times women do it the other way. They talk about the niches and the strategy, and they forget to really ask themselves those harder questions of, what is this, what's my perfect day look like? What do I want to be in 5 years? What's really ideal to me? And then how does the business move me towards that? That's a big question. So I think that's great. And clearly you did that early on and then really expanded from there. So Cristina, how can the ladies listening learn more about you and follow you along your journey?
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram and Facebook. It's Cristina Kudlock. You spelled my name CR. There's no H in it. And then Kudlock is KUDLOCK. So I'm on.
Awesome. All this information you guys can find on our show notes. Now we're going to transition to our fabulous 3 questions. And the first one is, what's the most transformational book you ever read?
That's a good one. The most transformational book. You know what? I love Atomic Habits. I really do. I think I love the idea of just like a little bit more each day, a little bit better each day, I think that's a great one.
It is indeed. The second question is, what's the most powerful routine that you do to create a financially free and balanced life?
Exercise.
In the
Exercising
morning,
in
the
the morning.
afternoon,
In the
in the
morning.
morning.
Exercising in the morning. Yeah. Without a
Awesome.
doubt.
Which woman, famous or not, has inspired you the most?
My mom. Definitely my mom. My mom, she came to the United States from Mexico when she was like in junior high school era. It's like the hardest time at all, for transitioning for a kid. And she didn't know any English and everything. And so she's had a bumpy, hard life, but it's been inspiring to watch. So
awesome.
Cristina, thank you so much for being on our show, sharing your tips and ideas and your path, and appreciate your time very much. And, thanks for being here.
Yeah. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Andresa. It was great talking to you guys.
Great to talk to you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
If you enjoyed this podcast and want to receive updates on our next interviews, go to our website, therealestateinvestor.com. There, you can subscribe to our show, become part of our investor community, and get updates on upcoming episodes.
If you like our show, please share it with other women who would benefit. And don't forget to leave us a rating on iTunes. We'd really appreciate it. And as always, we encourage you to take one action as a result of today's show and put it into motion so you can live both a financially free and balanced life. Thanks for spending time with us.
Ciao.